Hello everybody, Timothy Bailey from Project Learn, and Wilma is with me here today. Today we're going to look at some English words, question mark. The topic for today's video came to me when I was driving past a local establishment, a place that has a restaurant, and they had a sign for this product here. And the sign looked something like this: Broasted Chicken Dinner, November 6th, you can see there. So the word in question that got me thinking was the word broasted. Right? I know what it means, but strangely, I wasn't sure if it's actually a word. And this is a difficult one because it sort of is and it sort of isn't. I looked at two dictionaries, and neither dictionary had this word in it yet. This is sort of a new word, a newly created word. And it does something that many new words do that enter the English language. It's a combination. So it combines two methods of cooking. One is broiling, sort of like in this picture, right under a very high heat, you can see here. And then another one, roasting, such as the turkey on Thanksgiving, where the temperature, the warm temperature is all around and the air goes all around the food. The two are sort of cut. We combine the beginning of broiling and the end of roasting, and we get broast or broasting or broasted, the adjective. So today what we're going to look at are some examples of things that might be words in one way, but are used in a way that is incorrect. I often give advice about listening to native speakers, but sometimes you might learn something that's not exactly the way to do things. Let's go ahead and start. I have a lot of books. I mentioned this particular issue in other videos. This is a very common one. Perhaps you remember your English teacher, your ESL teacher, circling this on your paper. And as we go through them, I want you to think what the problem is. Okay? Usually one or two words, I think. The problem here is this. A-L-O-T, one word. Right? This is not a word. You do not want to use this. What do you want to use? Well, you want to use this, right? With the space. A lot, right, of books. She likes soccer, volleyball, and etc. What's the problem here? The problem here is with the last two, right? Etc. by itself means and so on, right? She likes soccer, volleyball, and so on. So then, this and we do not need, because then it tells us and so on, right? It's redundant, what we call. It repeats information that we do not need to repeat, right? It's not necessary. So what can we say? She likes soccer, volleyball, etc. Right? She likes soccer, volleyball, and so on. His dad couldn't find him anywheres. This is certainly one you will hear, quite possibly, depending on perhaps the part of the country that you live in. What is the problem? Well, the problem is the word anywheres. There are a group of words that native speakers often add an S onto. We do not need that S, right? The S is technically incorrect. The word is just anywhere, right? Just like this. We see that with other words such as nowhere. You'll hear nowheres, anyhow. You might hear anyhows, somewheres. These sorts of words, often certain native speakers will add an S on to the end. Raul could have moved to China, but the pandemic canceled his plans. What's the problem? This one, two words. Problem is this. Could of, right? We don't need the of. What we need is another word, a different word, and that word is have. Have. So Raul could have moved. Now the problem is when you say could have, it's very easy. Raul could have moved to China. But if we use the contraction, Raul could have moved to China, it begins to sound like this. And this is where many native speakers and English learners get into trouble. They hear this in their mind when they're writing a sentence, so they spell this because this sounds like this, right? But keep in mind the pronunciation of this means this. These two go together, not this one. He finished the project himself. What's the problem? Well, the problem is his self, right? This is not a word. So again, another example of something that is not a word. What we're trying to put here is a reflexive pronoun. A reflexive pronoun, right, is a pronoun typically at the end of the sentence that reflects like a mirror back to the subject, right, he. When we have reflexive pronouns, you should be able to find the beginning pronoun, right, the subject pronoun, and then you should find the reflexive pronoun with the self, right? So himself. And here they are, right? You see the subject pronouns on the left. I, you, singular. He, she, it, we, you, plural, and they. Then on the right, you see the reflexive pronouns. Myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself. These ones are a little bit more difficult. Ourselves, yourselves, plural, themselves, right? So pay special attention to the actual pronoun that's being attached to the word self or selves. Nancy lives the furthest from our house. To be honest, I've never heard this one in my English sort of listening experience. Right, this is kind of a fun one, but the problem, furthest, not a word. What do we not do? I made a video about comparatives with the ER suffix and superlatives with the EST suffix. Also, sometimes remember adjectives must use most or more. We do not combine them, right? So we do not add the ER and the EST. So the question is how do we know which one we want to use in this sentence? Well, notice the the article here, the. The tells us we are looking at a particular, a special instance, a special thing, right? Not a group or in general, right? The most something. And when we're doing that, we're going to use the EST, the superlative, right? Furthest. And so Nancy lives the furthest from our house. Perhaps the furthest of our family, the furthest of our friends, whatever. Okay? Yatta wouldn't have traveled to the US irregardless of the pandemic. This one, in comparison to furthest, you will hear. And I hear it quite often. And you hear it so much that it probably, at some point, if it doesn't already, will show up in some dictionaries, right? What is the problem? Well, the problem is irregardless, right? And while you might use this or you might hear this in fluent native English speaking, you probably want to be careful that you're not using it somehow in your resume or in a job interview or something sort of more professional. If you don't want to use it at all, that's great as well. The problem here, just like furthest, we have two affixes, a prefix in this case and a suffix. So IR, which means not, and less, that means sort of without, right? Also another way of saying sort of not, right? The way we have the word irregardless means something like not without paying thought or paying attention. Regard means to think about something, to pay attention to it. So irregardless has sort of two negatives and then paying thought or paying attention. So if you are irregardless, then that is paying attention, right? It gets very confusing, right? Keep it simple. Regardless, without thought, without thinking, right? We do not need two negative affixes, right? Prefix and suffix. And what happened to my screen here? So moving on. There we go. Now you just saw them, didn't you? Let's us go to the cinema this Saturday. The mistake here, the error, let's us, right? We do not want to say this. Why? Well, quite simply, let's us equals let us, right? Let us go to the cinema this Saturday. Because let's means let us, right? So you can either use let's go to the cinema this Saturday or let us go to the cinema this Saturday. We do not need to double up and use it 2 times, just like before we used 2 negative affixes. He doesn't like bananas, no how. Another one you will probably hear. What is the mistake? Well, the mistake is no how, right? This is not a word. We do not use this. There are 2 good things you could say instead. He doesn't like bananas anyway, right? Another thing you might hear, to go back to a previous slide with nowheres and anywheres, this does not have an S on it. He doesn't like bananas anyway, right? Not anyways. He doesn't like bananas at all, right? At all. Now, there is a word that sounds like this, but it has a different meaning and a different spelling. Know how, right? Knowledge of how to do something. This one's easy to remember. Here's a good example. A mechanic's know-how can save you a lot of money. A mechanic is someone who fixes a car. What a mechanic knows how to do, the knowledge they have about how to fix cars, can save you a lot of money. The thing about a language, any language, is it does change. So the things we've looked at today, if we were to travel into the future, perhaps 50 years, I don't know, 100 years, all of these things, people might laugh and say, those are just regular words, right? Keep in mind, while people are using them and they seem like regular words when just speaking English, they still might not be words you want to use when you're being professional or going to a job interview or something like that. Also, if you really want to focus on just using your English correctly, don't use them either. I hope this was interesting and fun. Here are a couple links. This is the link where I got the words we looked at today. And this has 11 words, common words that are also misused, right? These are words, but they're misused somehow. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.